But speaking of revenue streams and how they make their money, how WWE really makes its money is on its media rights deals. Where would they be without all that media rights money that they're guaranteed every year? They have been negotiating their next media rights package as the deals for Raw and Smackdown and NXT are up in the fall of 2024. This week, we learn where Smackdown is headed starting in October of next year. The show is leaving Fox after 5 years, and it is heading back to USA Network. It has been a journey for this show since 1999. It started on UPN, and I remember that too. They had a special on UPN. I want to say it was in April of 99. It was almost like a pilot, like a test episode. And then they picked it up, and SmackDown officially started in August of 99. So they were on UPN Network at the very beginning. Then they moved to the CW Network. Then they moved to My Network TV. Then it was Sci-Fi. Then it was over to USA. Then to Fox. And while they were on Fox, they would occasionally air on FS1 when there was some sort of preemption. And now they're back to USA. That means the show is leaving network television and going back to cable, which is a definite downgrade as far as the audience goes. Money-wise, I mean, the financial terms were not disclosed, but the Wall Street Journal and CNBC, they both said that, according to people familiar with the deal, they value it at roughly $1.4 billion, or $287 million per year for 5 years. That's a 40% increase over the $205 million per year that they got on their Fox deal. Wall Street didn't like that very much. The TKO stock was way down on the news because Wall Street was expecting more. The Journal said Fox did not aggressively seek to keep SmackDown. They have increased their college sports rights and is expected to easily fill SmackDown's Friday night slot with other programming. This sounds to me like a short-term gain, long-term pain type of situation where they're getting more money, but they're getting more money at the expense of a smaller audience for the show. You know, SmackDown is not getting anywhere close to the numbers on USA that they do on Fox. Those weeks of 2 million plus viewers for SmackDown, those days are over starting next fall. It's not going to happen. One benefit to this is that SmackDown is not married to Friday nights anymore. I mean, I didn't see anywhere in the announcement that said that the show is locked in to Friday nights. I mean, they called it Friday Night SmackDown. That does not mean the show is necessarily going to stay on Fridays. USA can move the show to another night if they wanted to, like Tuesday or Thursday. You know, the last time SmackDown was on USA, it aired on Tuesdays. I even see some speculation that they can move the show to Wednesdays and go head-to-head with AEW Dynamite. Now, as someone who reviews both shows live, that would suck. I don't want to see that. I don't want SmackDown on Wednesdays. I think SmackDown was best on Thursdays. I would love to see that again, but they would have to compete with Thursday Night Football. I don't think that's something they want to do. If SmackDown stays on Fridays, then what they could do is continue running the same venue on pay-per-view weekends, because what they've been doing is they run the same building back-to-back nights, so wherever the pay-per-view is on Saturday, ever since they moved to this Saturday model, they just run SmackDown in the same building the night before. It probably saves them money. So I don't know, I mean, that's going to be one of the more interesting stories to follow, whether they keep the show on Fridays or not. Now, another benefit to airing on USA and not Fox is that they would have the option of an overrun if USA allowed it. USA usually allows an overrun for NXT of 7 or 8 minutes. For whatever reason, they don't do that for Raw. Well, actually, Raw doesn't need it because Raw's 3 fucking hours. If you can't get your shit in 3 hours, then you're doing something wrong. So Raw doesn't need an overrun. NXT gets an overrun. They theoretically would have that option now to do that with SmackDown if they wanted to. You can't do that on Fox because they have a hard stop at 10 p.m. for their local newscasts. But one huge negative as a viewer, as this viewer, this guy right here, is the possibility that USA might want WWE to expand SmackDown to 3 hours like they did Raw many years ago, back in 2012. And we end up with 3 hours of SmackDown every week. That is a very real possibility, and it makes me sick just thinking about it. But the deal also includes 4 primetime specials on NBC every year, so they will still have a presence on network television, just not every week like they do now. And that's a huge drop. I mean, you're talking 4 weeks a year as compared to 52 weeks a year. So what does this mean for Raw and NXT? Well, according to a story in The Hollywood Reporter, while the new deal will bring WWE to NBC Primetime and SmackDown to USA, it will also mean the end of Raw and NXT on USA. A source familiar with the Raw discussions tells The Hollywood Reporter that the market for the program is extremely active, with traditional linear network streaming services and, quote, unexpected players all interested. So they kind of buried the lead there because that paragraph is like the second to last paragraph in the story. They kind of snuck that in there that, oh, by the way, by virtue of this deal, that means that Raw and NXT will no longer be on USA. If that's true, that's a big deal. I don't know why you would put that towards the end of the story. My understanding is that NBC Universal has the rights to match any proposed deal for Raw and NXT. So even though in the article they make it sound like they're gone from USA, I think it's still possible they could stay within at least the NBC Universal family, if not specifically USA Network. But for now, they're hitting the open market like a player testing free agency. And if they were to end up staying with NBC Universal, that means that NBC would have exclusivity over all WWE programming. So they could, in theory, they could get the shows up the very next day on Peacock if they wanted to. You wouldn't have to wait the usual 30 days to see the shows on there. And their deal with Peacock is good through 2026, so they still have time left on that. Disney, you have to think Disney could be in the mix. Not necessarily for Disney Plus. There's ESPN Plus. There's FX. They could put Raw on FX. You know, would Disney be willing to pony up $250 million or $300 million a year at a time when they're having pretty big money issues? That's the issue there that makes me wonder. You know, Disney might be in the mix, but how serious a player are they in these discussions? Amazon could definitely be a landing spot. I think Amazon's a bigger possibility than Disney as a landing spot for Raw. Triple H was spotted sitting next to Jeff Bezos at New York Fashion Week a few weeks ago because Maxine Dupree was there walking the runway, and they were spotted sitting next to each other. Nick Khan has talked about Thursday Night Football's move to Amazon. He's talked about it in glowing terms. Now, the story mentions unexpected players being in the mix. What would it look like if Warner Brothers Discovery wanted a piece of WWE programming? Can you imagine Raw moving to TNT or TBS? I think this is the least likely option, but they would be an unexpected player, right? I mean, they would certainly fit that description, and they have their Max service. Imagine WWE getting on Max before AEW does. That would be hilarious, actually, if it worked out that way. I think Raw ending up on a service like Max would be death for the show because they would be limiting their audience so much. But, you know, money talks. And if they get a big money offer, they'd probably take it, right? Because they have shareholders to answer to. And that's, in the end, that's all that matters is how much money can they make. What would it mean for AEW? I have no idea. I mean, it looks like Warner picked up its option year on AEW because all that talk a few months ago of them signing a new media rights deal, and maybe they'll announce it during the upfronts in May, and then nothing happened. All that talk just completely fizzled out. All the talk about, AEW is going to get $1 billion media rights deal just totally fizzled out. That's probably why. They probably had the option to extend them one more year, and they took that option, which means that next year, their deal is going to be coming up. And Warner could ditch AEW for WWE if they wanted to, but they seem very happy with AEW. The two sides have a great relationship. I just don't see that happening. I don't see them dropping them cold and just taking on WWE. But here's the other aspect of this story that is surprising to me. Raw could end up changing nights. And Meltzer mentioned this as a possibility also because they've been getting hit pretty hard lately by Monday Night Football. Now that all the games this season are airing on ABC, it's going to be even worse than usual for them. Apparently, they're open to moving Raw to a different night if one of these companies wanted to move them. And I think that would be awful. The show is called Monday Night Raw. It has been on Monday since 1993, since the very first episode. It would not feel right for it to be on any other night. Plus, they have so much equity on that night. Everybody knows that Mondays is wrestling night They know when the show airs. Why shift it to another night? If they moved it to, let's see here, Raw, if they moved it to Wednesdays, Raw and Dynamite would both take a hit if they wanted to put them head-to-head against each other. Because there is going to be crossover between the two audiences. It would hurt both shows, but that would hurt AEW way more than it would hurt WWE. Anyone thinking that there would be a real wrestling war on Wednesdays between Raw and Dynamite is fooling themselves. That would not end well for AEW. Otherwise, there's Tuesdays, there's Thursdays, but it's hard for me to imagine Raw on any night other than Monday. I think that would be a mistake.